Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first fireside chat of the year. For those of you who don't know me, I'm your new chapter director, Anele, and I'm so glad to be here to be able to host Ariel Nevaro. For those of you who don't know him, Ariel Nevaro is a serial entrepreneur as well as a COO as well as co-founder of OneCart. OneCart is South Africa's premier grocery delivery service, which allows you to shop from multiple stores in one cart. And to top it off, you can receive your order within 2 hours or whichever date you'd like to receive it. So I won't go into too much about what OneCart is, and we'll just start with the interview. Ariel, thank you so much for joining us. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for inviting me to chat to everyone. Appreciate it.
Perfect. So let's start off with a bit about you from your early life, should I say. So tell us a bit about your upbringing. Where are you from? What was the family dynamic? What was your childhood like for you?
My childhood. So, I was going to start from after matric, but if I start with childhood, I was initially born in Israel. Families from South America, and I came from Israel when I was 2 years old, so I'm more South African than anything. But yeah, I grew up in South Africa and moved around a couple of times, but yeah, that's kind of my childhood feels like a very long time ago.
Perfect. And by any chance, do you have any entrepreneurs in your family or family members that may have inspired you to take this route that were in your life consistently?
No, absolutely. I mean, my parents are both entrepreneurs. They came to South Africa with like $200 and started a very successful business in the pet industry. So they're definitely my inspiration.
Okay, and then so moving on to your life in high school. So when you went to high school, what was your state of mind? Did you know you wanted to pursue entrepreneurship, or was there something else in mind that at the time you wanted to pursue?
So I actually always knew that I wanted to be in health and fitness. So during my time in school, I was very into gym and not so much sports, but I just always wanted to pursue a career in health and fitness. So when I matriculated 2007, I got into health and fitness, and I was studied exercise specialist, and I was working in health and fitness for about 5 years.
For 5 years. So this was straight out of high school.
Yeah.
And from that business, so what did you then pursue after that? Did you start another venture after that, or was there something else that you pursued?
No, so after being in the health and fitness industry for about 5 years, I moved to Perth, studied a little bit more exercise science in Australia, and then after about a year, came back and went to Cape Town, was working as a Pilates instructor, exercise specialist for about a year in Cape Town. And then when I was in Cape Town, I thought, okay, now let me diversify and think, how can I make money when I'm not physically always doing the work, per hour type of thing. So that's kind of what spiraled my way into entrepreneurship.
And then what was the first thing that you got into from that moment that you had that realization?
First thing that I got into was actually trying to sell fitness courses online. Did that unsuccessfully, and then moved into a whole lot of different ventures. I developed a herbal remedy for focus and concentration, and I wasn't actually focused enough, so I never actually took off. And then I started a cricket academy. I don't even like cricket, but I like the business model. So pursued that for about a year, and then that didn't work out because of the partnership, and then got involved in a couple other things. I mean, one notable business is a phone accessory company that I started with another business partner, and we had that for about just under 2 years. secured quite a few big deals. We were manufacturing locally, like these little phone covers. And then we, kind of like felt like we hit the jackpot. We hit a good deal with a large corporate. And then we were kind of asked to manufacture a few hundred thousand rand worth of this product and have it delivered within a few weeks. We took it on. We took a short-term loan. I was 22 at the time. Took a short-term loan of about 200,000 rand. And then in the process of manufacturing, they were testing the product in a few stores. The test didn't go well. And we had delivered the final product a few days late, and they canceled the order. And then when they canceled the order, it kind of left us in 100,000 rand debt literally overnight. That was kind of like a rock bottom moment. Really, and that's really comes down to not having your contracts like tight enough. So that's definitely one lesson learned.
Could you speak a bit more into contracting? Because you mentioned now that it was a key take from that experience. So could you just elaborate for audience just to have an idea of what they need to be on the lookout for when conducting business operations?
So, I mean, there's so many contracts that are, every contract is different. It's really comes down to how you want to secure, your business and what you need to do to make sure that your risk is mitigated as much as possible. One of the kind of lessons learned is you can't use a stock standard contract, copy paste. In some situations you can, sure. But I think it's very, very important to just have your contracts validated or at least checked by someone who can help you structure a contract properly. Sometimes, NDAs might be a bit different depending on who you're working with. But if it's a contract that is directly going to impact the selling of your product, there are so many ways and so many startup lawyers and guys that are looking to help startups in setting up small businesses and things like that. So there's so many ways that you can get contracts verified or drafted at a cheaper price. Actually, one of the businesses that I started was called LegalFox.co today. It's not operational, but the reason that I started was the concept of quick contract verification, and that was a result of this experience. Eventually sold the company to the law firm that I partnered with, but they haven't operationalized it, unfortunately.
So after this experience, so now you were left in debt. Did you have your last stint at entrepreneurship before OneCart occurred, or another organization that you may have taken part in?
Yeah, I mean, after I got into that little bit of debt, I realized I have to actually find a job because I had no money. So I got a job as an executive assistant for Eric Edelstein, who I'm very friendly with currently, like present as well. And Eric he co-founded Yola and Clicks to Customers with Vinny Lingham, who you may know from Gift. And a few other startups. And through working with him, he kind of introduced me to the tech ecosystem. And that's where I actually also heard about Startup Grind. And I attended over 15 or so of Startup Grind events when I was around 23, 24. So that was kind of like my introduction to the whole tech ecosystem. And through there, with Eric, we launched Entrepreneur Traction, which was an initiative to promote collaboration between startups and investors. And for me, that was great because that really gave me a lot of insight into raising capital and just broadened my own network as well. And then leading into OneCart. So after a couple of years, when I was about 25, I got a job as a property portfolio manager, managing shopping centers in townships. Did that for about 2 years, and during that time, I also studied shopping center leadership got my qualification in shopping center management. And then after about 2 years, I decided to move back to Joburg to help my family business in digitizing their pet stores, so taking their business online. During that time, I met my current business partner, Linton, who introduced me to the idea of OneCart, and I consulted from like an operational side for a few months, and then in August, and then afterwards, he asked me to come in as a co-founder and COO. We did a couple of months of planning, and then in August 2017, we started testing the app, and then we went live with the app in November 2017. That was how OneCart initially started.
So with regards to the testing phase, so you mentioned that he already had the concept and the idea, and then you joined on the team. So how did it go from just having the rough draft of what you want to execute with this idea to actually testing it? How did you go about the testing and trying to get people to actually adopt this this business or this way that you streamline things?
So, I mean, definitely a lot of planning, a lot of research went into how are you going to shop on the app? What's the best user experience around what could be the best user experience around it? Are people buying groceries online? Do they want to buy groceries online? So a lot of that research was done before we started testing the product, and we kind of validated that people do want to shop online. It might be too early or just the right time, but there was definitely proof that people were buying food online. So we validated the idea before, and then when we started testing the app, it was all friends and family. So it was my mom, Lynn's family, everyone was we were just trying to get anyone to test the app. And when we were testing the app, it was very, very raw, rudimental. It was literally like a very basic app. The shopping list was sent on WhatsApp. I was running around into the stores, collecting the items, doing the deliveries.
Yeah.
And there was one instance where I'll talk about it just now, but when we actually went live in 2018, where I felt like a hero delivering a whole bunch of water during like this water crisis in Sandton. And then I get to this office park, and all of a sudden I'm carrying like 40 barrels of water. I'm sweating head to toe, and the client who placed the order was like, "Thank you, leave it over there." Like that was it.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to understand your state of mind. So you went through, so I would describe it as a horrendous experience where you were left in debt, and then you went on into shopping center management, and then like what made you want to go into entrepreneurship again or give it that last try, because that seems quite traumatic to be left in so much debt. So what was your train of thought at that state, like, or during that time?
It's definitely it's like ambition. You definitely have to have passion and a drive to want to succeed or make it, and I mean, everyone's each to their own. Some people want to build up in the corporate ladder, others want to make it themselves, and everyone has a different start to their journey. For me, one of like a tipping point for me was when we raised our first round of capital in January 2018 for OneCart. When we closed that round of capital with our seed funders, that for me felt like a massive sense of accomplishment. It was like 10 years of pushing hard to try and try different ideas and trying different ways to kind of like make it. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden we raised this round of capital that definitely felt like a massive sense of achievement, and that kind of like that stays with you, like that sense of you're on the path to success. That is definitely a motivation factor.
And so before you got that round of funding, so like what are some examples of some small wins you experienced, and what were like, was it stressful, or did you kind of get used to that high paced growth? Because you also are aware that once like after funding, then COVID hits, and your sales skyrocketed by like 500%. So before that time, so what were the operations like? Like, what was your customer base, as well as how many people were on your team, and just how were things on the daily for you?
So, okay, so 2018 was an interesting year. I think definitely a lot of small wins, a lot of stories in 2018, being like the first year that we're actually live. We hired our first staff member 2018. We moved into a small office of 3 people. A couple of months later, around April, I think we hired March, we hired the first shopper, Cindy, who's actually still with us today as a shopper. But she's still with us, which is great. And things were moving quite quickly. We launched a few more locations in Joburg around June, and then around July, I think it was July, we decided let's expand to other cities. So let's move to Cape Town, let's go to Durban, let's go to Pretoria. I think one may, argue if it was too soon to roll out to another city when you've barely just, started in the first one. But I think we were very bold and, pushing hard, very overconfident. So we eventually decided let's do it, and we launched in these other cities to kind of get that, first to market. It was tough. We burnt through a lot of cash, but sales were growing, and I think by the end of 2018 we had done about 5.3 million in sales. Let me just think. About 4 million in sales, I think, by the end of 2018. And then 2018 was a good year. 2018. 2019 was a little bit more of a difficult one.
So, okay, so do you have any advice that you'd give to any entrepreneurs currently in the stage where their businesses is growing fine, but now they want to scale it to different cities or locations? Like, what key advice do you wish maybe you would have known at that stage that you'd want to impart with someone else right now?
So, I mean, in our case, moving to different cities, it was a very, very hands-on, very hands-on approach. Had I, in hindsight, we could have planned the rollout a little bit better. Planned almost like just planned the day-to-day a little bit better, but at the time we didn't actually know what it was going to be like. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience. We were on the ground in Cape Town, going into stores, asking the store staff if they have brothers and sisters that need a job, and that's how we were recruiting. It was very, very fast, and meanwhile the operation in Joburg was still growing. So we were managing the orders in Joburg and managing the business in Joburg while traveling around Durban and Pretoria and Cape Town. So it was a lot of split focus. It was a lot of multitasking every single day. So maybe one of the pieces of advice that I would give is almost have a little bit more of an organized approach on how exactly you're going to focus on the rollout or on the recruitment, and just have more focus in whatever you're doing at the time, because I was personally just running around, launching a city, me doing meets and greets, recruiting, playing HR, playing marketing, playing finance. So you know when you're trying to tackle every single department and scale up and roll out to different locations, you're just taking on too much.
Yeah.
And mistakes are made. Mistakes are made when you're taking on too much, and trying to be a jack of all trades is just not a good idea.
So, okay, so you mentioned that like the challenge, should I say, is that you were multitasking and taking on too much responsibility during a short period of time. So when COVID hits, I think a lot of us were quite surprised when it came to the country in March. So now your orders have increased by 500%. You're seeing 10 times the usual daily number of customers on the app. So what was your train of thought? Did you first see it as like a threat, or did you immediately see it as an opportunity to expand and go harder on everything?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great question. During 2019, we were growing consistently. We were seeing some very nice growth, and then by the end of the year, we had about 17 million in sales by I think it was September, and we were trending quite nicely. Then just fast forward to 2020, when we kind of went through quite a rough patch in December 2019. Going into 2020, we felt quite confident, and we were pushing quite strong. We were doing about 3 or 4 million rand a month in sales. When COVID hit, or at least when the announcement came around March, all of a sudden we felt like we definitely saw it as an opportunity. We definitely did not know what was going to hit us. We grew exponentially over the next few months. We recruited over 400 shoppers and drivers. By then we had already moved into bigger offices. We had around 20 full-time staff, and we were just hiring more and more and more. And the idea was take advantage of the opportunity, as however you take it. But in order to leverage off that and then kind of start accepting the demand, you have to be able to scale with that demand. And scaling with that demand, and then being able to scale operationally and meet the demand was very, very, very challenging. Was probably one of the most stressful, most difficult times that we've actually had to face in OneCart history. It was extremely, extremely stressful. The cash burn was very heavy. We had closed our second round of funding just before that, which was supposed to last us about 12 months to get to profit. And then with COVID, everything just kind of, flipped. We managed to kind of fight through. We fought through all the stress and all that, but we kind of worked out a lot of the operational kinks along the way. We definitely reached a much better and a very different level in the business because of COVID. In 2020, I think we did over 150 million in sales for the year. And we moved into another bigger office, so 500 square meters. We've got over 50 in the head office now, with the finance department, HR, marketing, biz dev, developers. Yeah. So I think one of the main things during COVID, though, it was very, very, very stressful. It was very hard to manage the growth operationally. And I think one of the biggest motivators is kind of the fear of failure. It's almost like because you asked about mindset before. It's when I think back on my mindset during COVID or during the scale up, is definitely looking back and waking up every day and thinking what is my motivation today? It's not letting this business fail. Because at any point, even though you're seeing this massive growth, from a cash flow perspective, it was very, very, very difficult to manage. And I think, there's that, everyone has that, or that saying, like, cash is king, cash flow is king. Yeah. Cash flow is everything. If you can't sort out your cash flow, like, that's definitely the one thing that we've kind of been working on and just improving ourselves as well.
So you did mention, so this was the most stressful time during OneCart history. So you mentioned it was stressful. Now everything was being flipped around, even though it wasn't a big opportunity. So besides the motivation that you just had to just keep it going, just keep the business alive, like, what other factor or mindset do you attribute to getting through that difficult phase?
Just keep your eye on the goal. Just keep your eye on, the reason that you started it. You almost have to go back to, why did you start the business in the first place, and almost, try and, I don't know, do whatever you can do when you wake up in the morning, to whether it's meditation, or whether it's training, or whatever you need to do to kind of go back and kind of figure out what motivates you, why did you start in the first place, what is your long-term goal for the business. And I think if you can continuously go back to that, then that's just how, at least that's for me, how I keep my head screwed on.
And then, so you mentioned that you also had to get a lot of full-time staff during this, during when COVID basically broke out here. So what were key traits that you used, or like any criteria that you used to add additional members to the team? Because I can imagine, like, things are already stressful. You need someone who's very competent and up to the job. What metric or criteria did you use to assess every candidate that came forth?
The recruiting process was an interesting one. I mean, we were hiring so fast that, or at least during that period, we were hiring so fast that there wasn't a lot of vetting done in some of the candidates. As a result, there were some losses incurred because of that, which was definitely a lesson learned. Have your HR recruitment in place. Make sure you do your background checks, do the reference calls, get all the documents in place. Do the things that you do them if you're not under pressure.
Yeah.
You got to actually take a step back and just say, this is the process. Be strict about it. Don't let the pressure kind of take over and skip the small steps. You got to do those. You got to take one small step at a time.
Great. So now that OneCart has been growing exponentially, like, we've all seen now the potential that the retail industry has, and because a lot of people were under the assumption, or there was this common myth going around that getting people in the country to adopt something like OneCart won't be an easy task, or it won't happen in the near future. And I think COVID kind of just streamlined that, and it made it happen sooner than most people expected it to happen. So where do you see the retail industry going from here? So now that everything can be accessed from an app, like, what is your vision for the future? And would you want to be a part of that future?
Yeah, look, I think the future is very exciting. I mean, we definitely we're in a massive time of change. That's for sure. Retail, I mean, I think it's going to be very experiential over the next few years. And I'm not so much of a futurist. I'll kind of like leave that to my business partner and some of the other guys I work with, I'm very like I'm more hands-on. I'm more looking at how can we grow the operation? What strategically do we need to do to build the business? But if I had to look at where the future of retail is going, it's more definitely believe in the whole dark store concept. So being able to fulfill from smaller fulfillment centers within smaller radii across different regions, that business model is definitely something that I think is going to take off pretty quickly. From going from brand direct to consumer, definitely something that is worth looking at. And I mean, every retailer is going to want to have their product delivered on demand. So on demand and having things delivered when you want it, without delays, whether it's a fridge or clothes or food. I really believe that most online offerings are going to be on demand in the very, very near future. So that's definitely something that we're also working towards, is increasing our offerings. And I mean, we already now offer everything from pharmacy with Discount, Clicks, and then pet stores. We just partner with Absolute Pets as well. We have Mr. Pet. So from pet industry to groceries to pharmacy to liquor, kind of trying to look at a lot of these categories as well. See how we can better optimize them. And yeah, I think if you look at, I mean, there's so much happening overseas with the future of retail. Alibaba's Jack Ma's it's a perfect example of what he's done with what does he call it? The new retail, where you actually walk in and you have, you buy your groceries and then you have them cooked straight there, and you go out. Like there's a lot of very interesting concepts coming out all over the world. So
that's great to hear. So I'm sure everyone's quite curious now. Are you looking at any point to be involved in the VC space or become an early stage investor? Given that you have so much knowledge, a lot of people definitely benefit from having you not only as like an investor, but also as a mentor. So is that on the horizon for you, or do you prefer to just stay not on the financial enabling side, but just on the entrepreneurial side, should I say?
Yeah, look, I mean, definitely when I have the means to become an investor, I'll definitely join the investor pool. I think as a mentor, I've been involved in a few different. I'm constantly working with startups and different entrepreneurs that come to me for advice. So as a mentor, there's definitely a lot that I'd like to add. Definitely, looking into, looking in the future, I think that there's opportunity for us to make certain acquisitions. There's definitely potential for us to grow in this space as well, and grow OneCart in the space. Personally, I mean, absolutely. If when I'm ready, I'll take on some of the investor pools as well.
Okay, so I think we can go into the questions now. So anyone who has a question, please drop it in the chat room, and we'll get to them. So before we get into the questions, actually, is there any last piece of advice that you'd like to leave with everyone here? Or insights?
I mean, there's so many. It just depends on what the context of it is. But if you, I think like just a broad general one. If you have an idea and you've got, you believe it can work, and you you do the research and you're passionate about it, don't delay. Just do it. Don't overthink it.
Just get it done.
Just get it done.
Okay, so the first question we have is from Mary Ovenstone, who says, did you have any executive or entrepreneurial coach to bounce off ideas during the development of the company?
No. So and it's actually it's a great question, because I had a lot of my own experience before starting OneCart as an entrepreneur, being involved in like lots of different businesses and having quite an operational focus. I knew what I needed to do to start the business. I knew what I needed to do to get the business to start making a little bit of money and to start making those few sales. Where we could have definitely benefited from a coach was during the growth phase in 2019, where there was a lot of unknowns. There was a lot of processes that weren't developed yet, specifically around finance processes. So there was, there was a lot of learnings that we probably could have had a better chance at losing less money at the time if we had certain consultants around us that we could bounce ideas off, or that could actually help in putting some of the processes in place.
Yeah.
So initially there was no coaching kind of like really needed at the very, very early stages, but it definitely would have helped be a year into it.
Someone, Mashubonke, asked for someone looking to take up your mentorship. How do they reach out to you?
So you can email me directly. It's ariel@onecart.co.za.
Third question from Navarro is, has 2020 opened more opportunities or narrowed them down specific to your industry?
Thanks, Navarro. So it's interesting, when in 2018, 2019, there were a ton of opportunities presented to us. We were trying to build OneCart, but then there was multiple opportunities almost every single month that were just coming our way. And some of them were interesting, some of them we were considering, but to be honest, they were all kind of focus kind of destroyers. They were all most of the opportunities that came to us we didn't take on because they were just breaking our focus from what the core was. And 2020 definitely helped further narrow our focus to the opportunity of OneCart, which was on-demand grocery delivery. So 2020 definitely helped us kind of like create a laser vision towards what the core of the business is. So even though there's a lot of opportunities that are being presented to us all the time, in a way it has narrowed our focus to capitalize on the current opportunity, but it definitely hasn't narrowed the opportunities. If you know what I mean. It's helped to keep our focus in check.
So key point is to just keep focused on one thing, make it go well before you expand or look into other opportunities. Would you say?
I think it's focus on what, where the focus needs to be at the time. So yeah, it's almost like where, what's that? Focus goes, energy flows, or energy flows, focus goes.
So we have a question from Sean Jacobs who says, did you ever have to pitch to strangers earlier on? And if so, how did you protect your IP or your concept?
So yeah, that's a question that actually has come up before. And it's definitely something that we were always kind of a little bit wary about at the very early stages. You know, you're pitching an idea and you hope that someone else is not going to steal it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea. You don't want someone to steal your idea, but you also have to realize that if you do need funding and you are looking to pitch the idea, you're going to have to tell someone. You're going to have to tell people about the idea, and you'd also you want to tell people about the idea and validate your idea as well before you start pitching to investors. So you know, people are not just going to all of a sudden steal your ideas. Like, it takes a lot of action to start something. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of everything in you to start something. If you've got a product that is, you know, completely revolutionary and you can potentially get a patent for, then, you know, develop the product and patent it, you know. But if you've got a business idea that it's going to take a lot of steps to operationalize it, you can't be scared to tell people about it, or you know, to be able to put the pitch decks together, to be able to put the plans together. You have to validate that idea and you have to tell people about it. And then you have to not waste time and take action, make it happen in as short amount of reasonable time as possible. Otherwise, you know, if you wait too long, then someone could potentially take it. But if you take action and you make it happen before, you can't be scared to tell people the idea.
A question from Mita Vanda is, how are you dealing with competition and the big retailers integrating forward? For example, Checkers 60 Seconds, and Pick and Pay bottles.
Yeah. So for us, it's important to, I guess what we always go back to is our service and what our unique selling point is, which is the multi-store concept. So we allow you to shop from Pick and Pay, Woolworths, and the bottle stores and the pet stores and all the stores that we offer macro at the same time on a single app with a single delivery fee. So that is our USP. Our unique selling point is the multi-store concept. It's the idea that you don't have to go from one app to another app to another app. It's also our approach to the shopping experience. We do consider ourselves like a bit of a different experience to Bottles and Checkers 60. And we constantly trying to enhance the experience. I mean, obviously everyone is as well, but we do try and offer more products, more categories, more different types of different departments. So one of the things that we do focus on is our offering and that multi-store approach.
So, question from Anissa.
Mm-hmm.
She says, earlier you mentioned the importance of cash flows. Would you recommend an aspiring entrepreneur to have a financial advisor in the early startup phase, or is it a learn as you grow process?
I would definitely advise on having a financial advisor. If you have a financial background, that helps a lot. If you have the means to have a financial advisor, then I would definitely say there's no wrong that can come out of having a financial advisor that you trust and that you believe will give you sound advice. Even at the very early onset. Yeah.
question from Debo Hall. He says, what work experience is definitely a must for anyone who wants to go into entrepreneurship?
What work experience? Sure. I think it depends. I mean, it's almost like you can look at it the other way around. So depending on your work experience may determine the business that you start. So, if you're coming from a retail background, you may want to start a business that is in retail because you have that work experience. If you have experience in, working in a tech company, you may want to start an app, because you have that experience. So I think it's more depends on the experience that you currently have, the work experience that you have below your belt when coming up with the idea on what you actually want to start.
A question from Brian. He says, as an e-commerce startup, how does one compete with the likes of Takealot?
So, I mean, I hope one day that we compete with Takealot. So that's one of the goals. Right now, Takealot is as a giant.
Yeah. And the last question from Ropa is, retail is a low margin business for the most part. How have you managed to control the cost, especially when you had to burn cash?
Yeah, so that's a great one. So one of the biggest learnings, best advice, is to know your unit economics, and really get an understanding on your business unit economics. Every business has got the unit economics is different for every business. But ultimately, the more you know about what levers to pull to increase your gross margins, what levers you have to increase your product profitability, and still keep it affordable to the consumer, the more you know about your own unit economics, the better you'll be able to manage your margins. And for us, it was a longer learning process for us to get a better understanding on our unit economics because of the growth that we experienced. We were doing so much during like 2019 and 2020. We were just doing so much that I think it took us a bit longer than it needed to get a good grip on our unit economics like we do today.
So this is not a question necessarily, but we have a shout out here from OneCart that says they love you and they appreciate everything you do from the business. This is from Raphael Smith.
Thanks, Raf.
Okay, and we're done with the questions. So for anyone who's interested in networking, please stay behind. We'll put you all in breakout rooms to mingle for about 10 minutes. But thank you so much, Ariel, for joining us today. I've learned a lot personally, and I'm sure everyone else has learned a lot. And we're so grateful for making the time for this. And we wish you all the best with OneCart and your future apart from OneCart. And hopefully we'll have you again. And
also, thanks, Anil. Thanks, everyone. And wish you guys all the best for the year ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.